All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get going. It's just a minute or two past 10:30. Great to have you all here. Welcome to the Kern County Superintendent of Schools app training on Google Forms. This is Google Forms for new users. So if you are either brand new or maybe a little bit new to Forms, this training is for you. Of course, all are welcome. But if you are already familiar with Forms and you're looking for deeper training, you're welcome to stay. Of course, we'd love to have you. But then also we will be running that later training, or pardon me, that more advanced training today, starting at 1 o'clock. So would love to have you for any and all of that. So with that, I'd like to jump in and just, if you haven't met any of us on the KCSOS onboarding and training team, leading the charge for us over on the left side is Dr. Krista Herrera. Krista is the administrator for professional learning and support. She is on another Zoom conference right now that I just checked out of in order to come over here. So she might pop in a little bit later, but my guess is that her time is booked right now this morning. In the middle, that's me. I'm Chris Persons, and I'm normally a management analyst with local control and accountability. However, these are not normal days, right? So I've been really excited to join this onboarding and training team, and I'm very excited to be working with you today on Google Forms. I consider myself a Google Uber user and have been on the platform for a number of years, so I'm really excited to be able to be here today with you. Prior to being, prior to coming over to the county office about a year and a half ago, I spent 21 years in the Kern High School District. So good to see some of my Kern High friends on our meeting today. And the third member of our team on the right side, my friend and colleague, Dr. Cameron Gwynn. And Cameron's with us today, so I'm going to pass things over to him to say hello real fast. Cam?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cameron Gwynn. I'm a management analyst with the Kern County Superintendent of Schools office. Thank you so much for being here and training alongside of us. We're learning all the time as we are teaching and working together. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Cam. Good to have everybody here today. So if you are, so we're here to go over Google Forms today. So please make sure that you've got Forms or you've got a Google window open on a tab, and we'll get to that in just 1 second. But first of all, a couple of things on Zoom etiquette. We're up to about 38 people here today, which is really hard to run if you don't have your microphones muted. It gets really distracting really fast. So let's keep our mics on mute. Please open up the chat. How Cameron and I run these trainings is while one of us is presenting, the other is managing the chat. We'll make sure we answer your questions as we go. We'll also pause intermittently to share those questions and the responses with the whole group. So we will seek to answer all of your questions before we're done here today. And then finally on Zoom, if you're newer to Zoom, we find the side-by-side view is really helpful to be able to see what the presenter is presenting as well as to watch chat. You're welcome, of course, to use anything you want to, but that side-by-side view is up at the top in your view options. So you might want to take a look at that. And then finally, before we jump into the platform, guys, our outcomes for today. So after this training, Forms for the new user, you will be able to create a form. You'll be able to add sections and questions to that form. You'll be able to customize the look of your form, use basic tools, and view responses. So I want to be really clear, like we talked about before, Forms is a very powerful tool, and there are lots and lots of bells and whistles to show you. I'm going to really filter what we cover today to get you up and running so it doesn't feel like you're drinking from that fire hose, and that instead you become functional with this platform by the time we're done today. And again, in the advanced training, we'll go through a lot more bells and whistles and kind of get a lot more geeky. But for this one, we're going to stay very functional to make sure that everybody can use the platform. So with that, I'm going to click over to my Google Drive, and we're going to start there. So as I maximize the screen here, again, in the chat, you'll see that link to take the form, to complete my form. Pardon me, if you haven't done that already. Yes, it is. I've seen in the chat, it is called a t-shirt form. I'm not really buying everybody t-shirts, but I do want to make sure that we have some things available for you. So first of all, let's talk about first how you create a form. So to start from nothing, if you don't have any forms, you go to your Google Drive. So everybody on here should have Google Drive. I assume that's why you're coming to the Google Form training. So from your Drive landing page, how you start a form is right up here in the top left. Let me expand that a little bit. I'm going to go to my Google Plus button, and you'll see that immediately I have these options. I don't know why Google Forms didn't make the front list, but you have to click more, and then you can select Google Forms. And you literally just click on Google Forms, and a new form will open up for you just like that. And you'll see it defaults to purple, but we'll get into color and how you can change all that here in just a few moments. So that's how you create a form. Again, you go to Drive. Let me just model that one more time, my friends. You go, let me make this smaller. You open up your Drive. You click on New. You go to More, and then that purple icon for Google Forms, click on that, and you will have a page just like this. So I'm going to pause right now because we really want this to be a participatory training. So please, in your tab, I'm going to mute my mic in a minute, go to your Drive, open a form, make sure that you have something just like I do to start with. So I'm going to pause here for just a minute, and we'll let everybody get their form started. And while we pause, Cam, is there anything in the chat so far?
There's nothing in the chat, guys. If you are new to using Zoom, though, with Chris sharing his screen, it might take up your full screen. You might have to go up to the top and click on View Options and click on Exit Full Screen. That'll give you a smaller box so you can find your way to your browser.
That's a great point, Cam. Thank you so much. All right. Everybody got a form opened up? I sure hope so. So the first thing that you'll see, the first thing that we want to talk about is sections. So there's sections, and I want to talk about sections and questions. So on my screen right here, you'll see first I've got this title area up at the very top where now my cursor is. This blue bar on the left side of any piece within a form, that will indicate where you are navigating or where you are adapting information. So this is just my title line up here where I can title the form whatever I want to title it. And here's where I can add a description. And of course, that's up to you. And then down here, you'll notice the next piece down, I'm going to click on that. It's going to expand. And I'm going to have the blue bar again here. It's going to show me where I'm at. And I kind of want to walk through a few pieces here. So right now we're in a section that has a question. So this is the question itself. If I wanted to add another question, then I'm just going to click right down here at the bottom on Duplicate, and it will add another question for me. Now, we're going to get into all the different types of questions in just a minute, but before we get too far into that, let me delete that real quick. And let's just talk about the toolbars that are available in Forms. So again, I've clicked on this section. Let's look at the right side toolbar over here. So there's a couple of things on this toolbar that I want to make sure that everybody can add or everybody can navigate. So this toolbar will add or adapt information in the section that I have selected. And remember, you can see what you've selected by this blue bar over on the left side. So if I hit the plus in a circle, it's going to add another question like we just did a minute ago. So that's one option. The second option here is import questions. I'm not going to touch that one right now. The import questions is a way to bring in questions from somewhere else. We'll cover that in the advanced survey, or the advanced training, but I'm not going to spend any time on that at the moment. The next one here, copy title, or pardon me, add title and description if I want to add. So again, remember we talked about this top piece being the title. If I want to add a title to this section, I can do that by just clicking add title, and I'm going to undo that real quick. You can also import images and video with these two options, with the pick option and the video option. Again, I'm going to cover that in the advanced training at 1 o'clock this afternoon. And then finally down here at the bottom, this has confused me forever. When I first got on Google, guys, or on Forms, I thought that this was an equal sign, and I could not figure out for the life of me how that meant add another section. Well, this is not an equal sign. This is showing you that it's going to add another box below. So you can see I have section 1 up here, and down here I have section 2, and I did that just by hitting this add section. Again, I can continue to do that and add more sections if I want to. So I'm going to go back to my question here. So every time you click on a question, this floating toolbar will follow you, and you can add questions here and add titles, etc., like we've talked about. But then there's a few more tools in the bottom here. So first of all, the duplicate, you'll see this kind of is meant to look like two pieces of paper, like coming off a copier. So if you want to duplicate a question, and we'll get into how to adapt questions here in just a moment, but let's say I wrote a question and I want to duplicate it again, maybe the answers are all the same. I can just click on duplicate, and it's going to drop another question in the same section right below. I'm going to undo that for the moment. If I decide, you know what, I don't need this question, I don't need this section, I'm going to instead, I want to throw this one away. I'm just going to click on the trash button there, and that'll make it go away. And I'll undo that again, just so I'm back in my regular question. And then the final piece over here is the required option. So when you think about doing forms, sometimes you want people to have an option to fill out that question or not. Maybe the question may or may not pertain to them. But there are other times when you want the student or the participant to answer any or all questions. So how you do that is on a question by question basis. So if I turn this purple or slide it over to the right, it is now a required question. The participant cannot submit the form until that question has been answered, and they'll get an error message that they have to go back. If I want to turn it off, I just click it over to the left, and you'll see that it turns white, meaning it's off. So if you want to force somebody or require somebody to answer a question, here is where you control that. And again, you'll do that in every question. So anytime in a minute here, as we start to add questions, you'll see you've got that option. The last piece I want to show you here is this. I call this the skinny snowman. Some people call it the hot dog, but I call it the skinny snowman. There are a number of answers here, or options here in the skinny snowman, where you can add a description, or you can go to a section based on an answer, or shuffle order. These are all more advanced options that I will cover this afternoon. This go to section based on answer is called branch logic, and the shuffle piece is a tool that you can use when you're making a quiz, when you're using forms specifically for a quiz. But again, we'll cover that in the afternoon. The last piece I want to talk about in these bottom tools specifically, when I use this duplicate function, it's going to duplicate my question exactly. So just for this, I'm going to put text in here, and I'm going to put number 1 here. Whoops. I'm going to put answer number 1 here, and then I'm going to add another one here, and it's going to be number 2. If I then hit required on this, so I've made some changes to this question. If I hit duplicate now, it's not going to give me a blank question. It's going to duplicate this question itself. So if I really liked the answers on this question, I'm going to use it with a different format. I might use duplicate instead of start over. But please notice that everything copied down, including that this is a required question. So if there's a question and you get it all set up in your form and you know you're going to repeat that format or make it required or it has the same answer options, etc., using that duplicate button can save you a lot of time. The other way to get a question in, like let's say you want a new question, then if I don't want to duplicate what's there, then I'm going to use this plus sign. So there's 2 ways to get questions. One, in the bottom tools, if you duplicate, it's going to take over exactly what you've already created. But if you want a fresh start, then you're going to add a question here. So I'm going to pause for a minute, and I'm going to encourage you in your form to mess around a little bit and add some questions and add some sections. Now, we haven't talked about the type of questions yet, so don't worry about that. That's in this dropdown. I'm going to shift to that right after this. But let's pause for a minute and just have you kind of mess around. Come down here in the sections and add a section and see what that looks like. Add questions, type some text in. No one's going to see this but you. So I would say let's kick the tires a little bit, and I will pause. Cameron, do we have anything in the chat?
No, nothing in the chat, Chris.
Okay, then I'm going to pause for a minute, guys, and I'm going to let you guys create some questions and sections. If you have any questions or along the way, please jump into the chat and let us know how we can help. So I'm going to mute for a minute while we let you add some questions to your form. All right, I'm seeing a question. I'm getting a question. This is privately. How do I get the smaller screen and have both on the screen? So you mean in terms of being able to see the presentation that I'm giving, as well as have a tab open? Got it. Okay, so like Cameron said, what you want to do is you want to go to your view options at the top of your screen and click end full screen or stop full screen. And then that should minimize Zoom so that you can open up a tab on the side. Thank you for asking. Let's see, it's showing all my messages are set up to go privately. I'm sorry about that. Let me see if I can. Actually, Cam, while I start to move on, can you change the message option so that we can message to everybody?
Yeah, let me try it out.
Thank you so much. I'm very sorry about that. Thank you for telling me that, Cassie. I appreciate your help. Another question, will this PD be available for later review? Yes, it will. We are recording this and we will curate our videos and put them in the, we keep them in the teacher onboarding course for Canvas. So if you're part of our Canvas team, that's where they will live. If they're not, if you want to send us your email address, we can get you a link to that once they're edited. So if you want a private message myself or Cameron, we can help you out with that too.
All right, Chris, I think they can message publicly now.
All right. Let's see, can somebody try to send a message just to everyone, or down at the bottom of the chat, you should have the option to go to, hey, Maria, hi, thank you very much. Fabulous, appreciate that, friends. All right. Okay, so hopefully you've had some time to kick around a little bit and add questions and add sections. I'm gonna now shift over into talking about the types of questions that you can add. So I'm going to go into here my test question again that I created before. Now, the options for the type of questions that you can ask or use, pardon me, in forms are right here in this drop-down menu, and I'm going to hit it and just hang here for a minute. There are a ton of options, as you can see here, in terms of how you can get information from people in forms. I'm going to talk about right now the ones that, again, you're probably going to use most often. And are the most common. In the advanced training this afternoon, I'm going to cover the more complex ones. So in a moment, we're going to walk through one at a time, how to do a short answer question, how to do a paragraph question. You've seen the multiple choice, but we'll talk about that real quick. Also the checkboxes question format, and then the drop-down format. The rest of these, from file upload, linear, multiple choice grid, checkbox, date, time, all great tools, but all very advanced tools. I'm going to hold off on those for the advanced training. And again, you're welcome to come back at 1 o'clock for that. But just in case you're wondering, I'm going to limit that just because it can be too much too fast. And again, our point is to get you up and running. And these top options are the ones that you will most likely use. So let's go through these from the top down. So if I want to make a short answer question, so short answer is limited, I believe, to 500 characters. I could be wrong on that, but short answer is meant to be an open-ended tool for users to be able to give you brief feedback. So if I do my short answer text in here, I've selected the type here as short answer. And so here in the box is where I would type my prompt. And of course it would be longer than just one word, but you could ask your question there. You know, what are your first impressions of the causes of the Great Depression? Or, you know, what are your first impressions of this notice and wonder activity based on this picture? So you can put that in here, and then the participant will be able to add down here a short answer of, like I said, I believe up to 500 characters. It might be 1,000, but it is not an unlimited format. So times you might be using this, again, are to get quick individual feedback from students. This is a great way, or I would assume mostly for students, but it could be staff or adults as well. It is a really fabulous tool, though, to get just that brief custom response where the response you're looking for can't be necessarily summarized in a selection. The other open-ended answer that they can give is paragraph format. So the paragraph form, if I select this, you'll notice the only thing that changed is down here, long answer text. So long answer text has a much larger range. They can put in, I don't even honestly know what the character limit is, but I've had people submit literally paragraphs in long answer, and Google does not shut them off. So I'm sure there is a limit. I just don't know. If anybody out there knows what that is, drop it in the chat. So if you're looking for open-ended free response, the long answer, or pardon me, the short answer or the paragraph options are the two options. that I would give here. I'll tell you from my experience using forms, if I'm working with students, I tend to limit them to the short answer on this, because if I need something longer, I'm probably having them write a more formal paragraph or an activity, or doing a doc in a classroom or something like that. I'm probably doing that in a different environment, but you certainly can do it here if you want to. The third option is multiple choice. This is generally, especially with surveys, the option that you see most. And again, you'll notice I selected multiple choice up here in the top right. And then I could put my question in here in that top box again. And I start with one option, but you can see here, I just click on it and I can now call it what I'm just going to number it for the moment. But I love that Google is so intuitive about this. So I typed the word or the number 1 in here, and it's saying, hey, are you going to just put a bunch of numbers in? Because if I hit add all, it'll just put them there for me, which is great, right? I can undo that real quick. The other thing I love about the intuitiveness of Google in Forms, let's say that it's a yes, no. If I type yes, it's going to say, hey, I'm guessing you're going to also want no. And if I select that, it's just going to add it for me in the next question below. So again, it's intuitive in that it is expecting certain uses in multiple choice. Now you can type anything in here you want, but know that it's going to be trying to predict what you want to make it easier for you, and you can just hit select on those. The other thing I love about the multiple choice feature in Google, guys, is you could take multiple texts, like for instance here, let me grab some text here. I've got an outline open of this training, my notes, so to speak, and what we're going to cover today. If I copy that from another Google Doc and I come down here and I paste it, these were actually 4 different bullets in my notes, and you'll see that they didn't come in all in one. Google realized that I probably want 4 different answers here. So if you have your test questions and your answers already written in a Google Doc, you can copy and paste them in here in multiple choice, and it's just going to automatically assume that you want separate lines for all of those. The other great option I love about multiple choice is the add option or add other. So sometimes in a multiple choice quiz, you're going to say, here's your 2 or 3 or 4 answers. Pick one of these, but sometimes you might want to also add other. So if I add other, and I'll leave this here, when the participant takes the survey, they can select any one of these, or they can select other, and then they can add what the other is. So I'll show you that here in just a minute when we actually take a little view of this test. So, or pardon me, of this quiz. In fact, maybe it's a good time to actually do that right now. Let me show you how you do that. You know, we think about as you create a form, you want to know what the kids are looking at. If you, and again, I keep saying kids because that's probably how as teachers we're using this. So forgive me, it could be adults as well, but sorry, just part of the wiring, right? If I want to see what this is going to look like for my participants, if I go up here to the top, see this little eyeball at the top? If I hit preview right there, it's going to open a new window and it's going to show me what it looks like so far for the participants. So you can see here, I haven't added a title yet, but here's my prompt we talked about. Here's the dot, meaning it's required. Here's those 4 possible answers, and I can select any one of these. Or if I click on other, it's going to say, no, you're going to need to add text in right there. You're going to need to type something. I'm going to close that for the moment, and let me go back also. Sorry about that, guys. Let me go back and change the format here again of our question. I should have shown you what the short answer looks like too. So if I change the type of my question back to short answer, and I'm going to go to my big eyeball here in the top right corner, and I'm going to click on that. And you can see here is where I can type my answer, my short answer, 500 characters or less here. I'm going to close this again. And I'm going to go and I'm going to change it to long answer or paragraph form. And again, I'll go over here to my eyeball and click on my eyeball. And you can see now I've got an option for a longer answer here. So this is what your kids or your participants would be seeing. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a minute. Cam, do we have anything in the chat? And while we're answering things in the chat, guys, please add some questions to your survey, put some text in, and let's practice with short answer, paragraph, and multiple choice. And then in a moment, I'll go on to check boxes and drop down. Ooh, but you know what? Sorry, before we get to chat, one thing about multiple choice that is really worth remembering is that the difference between multiple choice and check boxes, with multiple choice, you can only select one answer. I'll show you in check boxes how to do multiple selections, but with multiple choice, the participant has to pick one of these answers. All right, Cam, what do we got in chat, sir?
So just one comment from a user here, and this is really specific if you're using it as like a feedback tool for a course or something instead of just an anonymous feedback tool. It says, because Google Forms will give responses to teachers depending on how students log into Forms, I always make question number 1 mandatory, and it is, what is your name? And it's worth no points.
Dr. Nichols, fabulous suggestion. Yes, I've done the same, and you're right. It all gets back to how your Google is set up for each district. So thank you for pointing that out. I will add that to my future opening as well. But yes, having, so what you would do there, guys, I'm going to go over here to the right, and I'm going to say add question. And I'm going to move it up to the top, and in Forms, you want to move it. You just grab it and drag it. And I'm going to make this a short answer question. And I'm going to put first and last name. Except for I'm going to go ahead and spell name right, just for fun. And then down here in the bottom right, remember, I want to make that required. That way, for sure, I know who submitted that form. I'll show you in a minute in settings how you can set that to auto-collect. But we'll get there in a minute. But thank you, Dr. Nichols. You're absolutely right. That is a great tip to cover right here. Cam, what else we got in the chat?
That's it, Chris.
Okay. I hope you guys have been kicking the tires on short answer and paragraph and multiple choice. Since there aren't any questions in the chat, I'm going to move on to our last 2 types of questions with check boxes and drop down. But if there are other questions, please don't hesitate to drop that into the chat so we can address it. So the next piece then is check boxes. And the question that we always get on check boxes is why would I use check boxes instead of multiple choice? And really, well, I think there's a couple of reasons. So number 1, to have a quiz that is all multiple choice, sometimes, or pardon me, a survey that's all multiple choice, sometimes that can really get monotonous for the user. So sometimes by using different formats, it helps keep their interest. And I'll go over that or show you that here in just a minute when we get to our little t-shirt sample quiz. But the thing I mentioned earlier about checkboxes, everything works the same in checkboxes the way it did for multiple choice. So again, you see I've pasted in here my options, potential options. I can click up in here and ask the question or change the question. But with checkboxes specifically, it allows me to select more than one answer. So if I'm going to go up here to my view screen. So again, I'm in the top right here. If I look at my eyeball here in the top right, I'm going to open that up so I can see what my kids are going to see when they take this. And you'll see, sorry about that, guys. I'm trying to get off of this page for us. There we go. Here we go. Now you'll see here's the checkbox question that I had. And with my checkboxes, you'll see I can select multiple options. With my prompt here for multiple choice, you'll see with the circles, I can only pick one of those before I submit it. So checkbox, you can select multiples, multiple choice, you only get one option to select in that field. So, and again, you're not limited to just 4 answers here. Again, here, let me go back to my list here. Let me go back to in here in the question. If I want to add more options, I can continue to add options, and you'll see here I'm obviously I'm adding the same thing over and over, but I guess I just wanted to point out you can have more than 4 options. You can have as many options as you like. I'm going to touch on something here real quick. There is a really great option in surveying people called branch logic that you can go to something based on an answer. I touched on it down here. It's in the Skinny Snowman. And this go to a section based on an answer, again, we'll cover this in advanced tools, but if you want somebody in a survey, if they select your first option here, if you have a very specific set of next questions for them, we can show you in the advanced questions how to go and employ branch logic and have them skip over questions that don't apply to them and go to a very targeted spot. So you can really customize the survey experience based on what you're trying to learn from the person. I'm not going to go into that much now. I just want to tease about it because branch logic, I think, is one of the most powerful tools in Forms, but we will cover that at 1 o'clock today. So, all right, and then our last form of question, I'm going to go back, I'm going to click on my question here. Well, the last form that we're going to cover today is the drop-down option. So a drop-down option, similar to multiple choice and similar to check boxes, you type your question in here. I've got all of my potential drop downs right here, and let's go and see what that looks like for the user. So again, I'm going to click on my eyeball, and you'll see up here first and last name, and I have all these options to choose. Now, first and last name is not what I would really use for this, but here they click on their drop down, and here's all the potential answers they could use. They select their answer and move on. So this is very much like multiple choice in that you'll see all the options, but you can only select one. I'm going to suggest that I think it's really great to use the drop down and multiple choice intermittently to keep users and participants interested. Again, if you have a 20 question multiple choice form, that can really turn people off, right? That can, I mean, just the monotony of that. So by having some that are checkboxes and some that are drop downs and some that are multiple choice, it just changes the view. I know it seems simple, but it's really amazing how that really does change people's interest in keeping them maybe staying in your survey all the way. So I'm going to pause here on questions for a minute. Cam, is there anything in the chat that we need to address? Because now that we've addressed questions, I want to give you guys a couple of minutes to mess around with drop down and checkbox questions, and then we're going to go into kind of how to look at some tools and change the look of your form. So Cameron?
Yeah, a cool tip from Robert. He said the multiple choice import, the cut and paste method, works with Microsoft Word as well. He just tried it.
Fabulous. Robert, thank you. I was not aware of that. I guess I assumed it was a Google platform piece, but that's great to know. So if you're cutting and pasting text in from a Word doc, you can paste it in there as well. Thank you very much, Robert. Appreciate that. Great to learn together. Cam, anything else in the chat?
No, that's it.
Okay. So guys, I'm going to grab my t-shirt survey here. Hold on. I'm going to go off of another screen here for a moment. All right, so now I've got my KCSOS forms up, and this is my t-shirt sign up. I'm going to switch over to this just because I have a couple of questions actually in here. By the way, you'll notice in this particular form, in this question, we actually added an image. Again, we're going to show you how to do that in the advanced training starting at 1 o'clock today. So I want to talk about then, once you get your quiz, or pardon me, it could be a quiz, but once you get your survey or your form created, then you have some options in order to change the look of it, to really customize what you have or how your page looks. So a number of ways to do that. And I'm going to start with the tools in the top right corner. I'm going to expand my screen here just a little bit while we go over these. Excuse me, let me get a drink of water here, guys. Apologies. There's some shortcut tools up here that are really, really important. I'm going to start with this one here. I call it the palette. But this is how you customize theme. I'm going to come back and go over the rest of these in a moment, but let's start with our color palette and customize theme. So I'm going to click on customize theme, and you'll notice on the right here, it opened up a number of options. So first of all, in the header, so the header of your form is this piece across the top, and when a student takes the form, this is the top of what they'll see. So let me real quick close this and just show you where that lives. So I'm going to pretend that we're going to see the form. This one has no header at the moment. In a minute, we're going to add a header, and you'll see it right above the description here. So let's close this for a second, and let's reopen our palette tool and customizing theme. So for the header, if I want to choose an image and start to make my form really pop, I'm going to start at the top here with choose image. Now, I love this tool because you have a lot of really great, crisp, clear photos that you can use here. And you can see in this pop-up window down the left side, there's all kinds of different themes. So if you're getting information for your class party, or maybe it's the last Friday of the month potluck sign up, maybe it's your kids party, maybe you're doing something for your sports schedule, lots of other options here. Maybe you're doing a unit on world history and you want to do something related to travel, but there's lots of grab and go options here that you can use. You can choose any one of these. You could also upload an image. So if you click on upload, it's going to say, great, grab the image that you want and drag it right here. Or you can go to your photos and you can link in, and this is linking to your Google Photos. So you can grab a photo there and make that the top as well. The thing I want to warn you about with uploading and with photos, It's going to scale a little bit different, and it's sometimes a little bit hard to see it on the header. So just make sure if you want to try to cut that picture into a rectangle ahead of time, if you're going to upload it as a header, because it's going to fill in this rectangle spot up at the top. These themes, these pre-selected themes here are all geared to fit in. So because I was a music teacher and a guitar player for a long time, I'm going to pick the music one here, and I'm going to hit insert. And it's going to drop in. Now it's added this header, you see, and it drops into the top. And notice also that it changed the color background to a color that was complementary to what Google read in this photo. So I have an image, I'm back over here in my theme options, but it also has a number of default colors. Maybe I don't like the yellow, maybe I would rather go with blue, but it's got a number of complementary colors based on the colors that it's sensing in that photo. If you don't like any of those at any time, you can override with your own custom color or input your own hex number if you want to do it that way.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
We got a question here. Once you click on the eye, how do you get back to the previous screen?
Oh, thank you very much. I apologize. So let's demonstrate that. And now this is a perfect time now that we have the header added. So I'm going to click on the eye, and it's going to bring me to my new screen. So now you'll see I have a header here again, and I've changed the color. And I apologize for not explaining this earlier. So when you go to the eyeball, it opens up a new tab. So across the top here, this tab I'm on is not the form itself. Now it's actually as if you're taking the form as a participant. So all I have to do is click back on this other tab, and I'm back in the form itself. So what I had been doing is I'd been clicking on the X to close this, and then going back to the form. So you just have to close the tab and go back. Great question. Thank you for that. The other piece, I want to go back to my palette here. Super easy to change the header. Let's say I don't want that guitar anymore. Maybe I found a better image. Maybe I'm just going to go with the color. I just hit this X, takes it right out. And again, I can select my theme color. So if I don't have an image on the top, I have all of these go-to options for colors that are kind of prefabbed, or I can add my own color here like I did before and add the hex. And then again, once I pick a color palette, like let's say I want to go with this kind of pea green, then I can also, you'll see that green is across the top here, this top bar right above my title, but I can also change the background to a color or a hue that I like. So, and then as far as customization goes, guys, there's an option down here at the bottom. You have a few font options that you can change and play with down here. So know that if you change that, it'll just automatically change that font style for you. So I'm going to go back and leave it at the default. So I'm going to pause for a minute here. I would really encourage you, if you haven't been clicking along on your form, please do so now. Let's take a few minutes, and I'm going to let you guys mess around with adding a picture. Oh, you know what? I was going to add a picture here real quick just to show you that. So let me, hold on, I'm going to have to minimize my screen here. You're probably going to have to deal with my geeky Star Wars pictures here for a minute, guys. And it is May the 4th, so you know, maybe Star Wars Day, maybe it's okay if we do a survey with a little bit of Star Wars on it. So let's say here, if I'm going to choose my image again, if I want to get my own image, if I have one already, I'm going to go to upload, and you can see here I can either browse my files and grab it, or I'm just going to go over here to the left side of my screen. I'm going to grab this lightsaber image, and actually I'll grab this Darth Vader one, and I can drag it over. And it's thinking about it here, and in a minute, a preview window should come up unless the scaling is off. And it's going to let me then drag this window in what I want to see. So again, notice the scaling here, this rectangle, it has to be this scale to fit in that header piece. So that's why it's going to give you this opportunity to pick. So for instance, if I had, let me clear that one out. If I had chosen this picture, this lightsaber picture instead, the Darth Vader one, it's easy to get that face. But for this one, I'm going to have to decide which part of the picture that I want potentially to be in the header. So just know if you pick your own picture and it's wider or taller generally is the problem than wide. But if it's taller than will fit in here, then you're going to get this preview window in just a minute. And I'm going to set that. And then if I hit done, that is going to become my new header in my survey. And you'll see the colors are going to change here in a minute. Right away, it read that picture to saying, hey, here's some complementary colors that we think would work really well for background. or of course I can add my own if I want to go a black background or something like that. So, all right, I'm going to pause again. I will not force everybody to look at Darth Vader. I'm going to pause. Do we have other questions? And I want you guys to be kicking the tires. And Hillary, may the force be with you also. What do we got, Cam?
Nothing in the chat, Chris. It's looking good.
Okay. I don't want to move too fast, guys, but I also don't want to move too slow. I wonder, let's see, maybe could we get a thumbs up if you're ready for me to move on? Or maybe put your hand up on the responses if you need another minute to kind of kick these tires. Just kind of going through. I'm seeing some thumbs up. Kuniselli's in the house. Fabulous. Tell Sarah hi. All right. All right, guys, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and move forward a little bit. Our next section is on looking at responses. So it's going to kind of be a big shift from creating questions. So we've created a form, we've added sections, we've added questions, and we learned about those 5 most common questions. And then we've also gone over the formatting pieces and how to customize the look of your survey as well. Now I want to start to look at the tools that we have for responses. So before I get to the overall tools for responses, I want to say that there are just exhaustive tools in here. And again, just as a reminder, I'm going to be very focused on the tools that we need specifically for this training and for getting you up and running in forms. In the advanced session at 1 o'clock and next week, we'll be going much more deeply into analytics and things like that. So, so first thing, if I want to view responses, so first of all, across the top of the page here, let me make this a little bit larger. So across the top of the page, I have 2 tabs. The first one is questions. Everything that we've done up to this point has been on the questions tab. So this is the page where you're doing the welcome and the custom header and putting in all of your questions. The other tab here is responses. And if I click on responses, now it's going to take me to a whole nother menu to be able to look at how people have responded to my survey. And I can get some topical kind of overall information, but I can also drill down and get the very individual information. So let's start by orienting ourselves with the options that we have here. You know what? I got to maximize my screen. I'm sorry, guys. I should have done that when I clicked back. Let's start here. Again, I'm up here at the top in responses. If I click on questions, I'm just going to go back to where we've spent all of our time, so we're familiar with that. Now I'm going to click on responses, and you'll see right down here, I'm going to make it a little larger. We have 3 options to view. I can view a summary of all the responses. I can view each question and how that was answered, and I can view individuals. So I'm going to start by the summary. So first of all, if I stay on this summary tab, it's been selected already. You see the selection bar is right below it. The first thing I'm going to see is some kind of a summary of each question. And Google makes some assumptions based on the type of question you ask, how you want to see the results in the automatic analytics. I can show you how you can change those from the Excel spreadsheet, or pardon me, from the Google sheet that has the data, but it just makes some assumptions, you know, to kind of get things going for you quickly. So first thing here is I see a scale of how many, I've had 12 people complete my survey. And here's just kind of a rough number from that name question. We have 2 Marias. Welcome to both our Marias. You can see down here then, I also have a summary. So I asked a question about shirt size. So you'll notice that it automatically went to a pie chart and it added percentages. And please notice that if you hover over any piece, it will give you more detailed information. So you can see here that we have 7 people that requested this size. We have 16.7 or 2 people that requested this size, etc. So by hovering over the piece, first you can see the overall summary, but then by hovering over the piece, you can see a little bit more detailed information. And of course, it builds in a legend for you right here as well. And look, if I hover over each on the legend, you'll notice when I hover over Excel, I get that kind of green shadow around that green box. It kind of brings that to my attention. So some really great user tools. If I go back up to this first question, same thing, I can hover over this bar and it's going to give me a count for that answer as well. And if you'll recall, this first question was created in a short paragraph form, so that's why it showed this kind of result. In the second question, remember, I put these 5 sizes in there, and they had to select one. So in a multiple choice, I got this pie grid right away. As I go down here to shirt color, again, remember this was a multiple choice question. I think I did this one as a drop down, if I remember correctly, just to model different types of questions. But again, same thing. I can hover over each piece for more information, and I can hover over the legend to highlight a certain response. And then down here, I also added an open-ended question. Hey, other thoughts, for people to give other responses. So the other piece I want to show you on this first tab for responses is this little tool in the far right corner. So on each one of these quick analytics, it's going to show you this paper, this copy chart. So this paper on top of a piece of paper. So if I want to copy this chart, so say I want to use this chart somewhere, if I hit copy chart, now I can, this is on my clipboard now, and let me navigate over here. Let me go back to my drive real quick, and let me just open a Google Doc real fast. So if I like this chart and I want to use it in a presentation or a doc, I can copy it from that response page, and I can paste it in right here. My doc is still opening up here. There it comes. And that chart, actually pasted it twice because I'm impatient. But as my internet catches up, that chart will appear here on this Google Doc page. There we go. So I can grab that from somewhere else, that analytic, and because it's Google, it works in the other platforms. So if I decide I need this in a report, I can drop it into a doc. If I decide I need this in a presentation, I can drop it into a slide quickly. I don't have to reformat it and copy it and make it somewhere else and then drop it in. I can just grab and go. So especially, I think some of those analytics that really can speed up your response time on those things. So that's the summary tab. I'm going to pause for just 1 second. Cameron, anything in the chat about the summary tab before I move on to the question tab?
Nope, nothing in the chat, Chris.
Okay. You may not, because the survey you have just created, probably won't have any responses yet. Like if I go back to my form here that I was messing with, if I click on responses, it'll just say waiting for responses. So to get data, whatever form you create, just hit that eyeball and take the survey a couple of times or complete the form a couple of times, and then you'll have some data in there to mess around with too. But for the moment, let's click on here and let's look at questions. So now I've looked at first the summary piece. Now I'm looking at the question format. This is going to show me a couple of things. First of all, you'll notice here in the middle, I have 4 questions in this survey, and it's going to show them to me one at a time. So if I want to see the first question, now if I want to go to the second question, I can just click on this arrow here to go to the second. Again, I can go on to the third, or I can navigate backwards to the second. So from this middle option, I can click in sequence through back and forth through the questions. However, if I want to jump to a certain question, especially if I have a survey that has, say, 20 responses on it or 20 questions, pardon me, I may not want to sit over here. If I want to go to number 18, I may not want to click through 18 questions. I can go to this jump to bar here, and I can jump right from the first one to the last one or vice versa. So a couple of really helpful navigation tools there. This is a shorter survey, so it's not as big of a deal, but in a longer survey, you would for sure want to look at that. So you can see here now I'm jumping into my actual responses, and I can look at the individual responses. It's telling me how many I have. And for instance, I can go back here to question 3, and I can look at the different responses for blue. So the question was shirt color. I had 5 responses for blue, 5 for purple, etc. Nobody wants a white t-shirt. Weird. Just kidding. So that can be very helpful as well. But this question piece really allows you to just look at individual data per question and how each question was answered in frequency. So very different use for that summary. I like to look at the summary piece as kind of that 30,000 foot view looking down over generally the results. If I click on question, I feel like I can really zoom down to about 10,000 feet and really see how people were doing with each question that I was asking. If I want to get down to ground level or that 100-foot close-up level, then I can go over here to individual responses. So I'm going to click on individual and make that big again now. So With the individual responses now, I'm going to be looking at how each respondent answered each of the questions. So this is where, especially if you're using it with your kids, you want to know, yes, how the class did. You want to know if your questions were effective. But at a certain point, you want to know how Chris did and how Camera did and how Linda did. You want to make sure that you have all of those things to be able to look at individually. So you can do this in the survey here on individual. You'll notice I have 12 responses to this survey. And right below here, I have a navigation bar where here's the first person who completed the survey and what they answered. And then I can click on here to see the second person, etc. So I can select a person and I can see how they answered. So this is where I can start to get some very individual answers. The other nice thing I love about the individual piece is, let's say that I want to print Maria number 1's answer for some reason. I can click on my print button, print response, and it's going to grab her responses and the size and all that stuff, and it's going to print off an individual document with just her responses on it, which can be helpful. And you can actually print that, or you can make that into a PDF, just a really easy way to get individual responses. Well, and let's say that somebody took the survey. Let's say that a student went in here and really kind of blew it off, and or just, it isn't accurate data and you want to get rid of it. That's what this trash function is for here. So trash will not eliminate all of the responses, but it will eliminate that individual response in the individual view. So again, I'm in the individual view. Let's say that response number 6, sorry, Colin, let's say that your response was inaccurate or whatever. I can simply just hit trash, delete the response. It's going to give me a confirmation window. Are you sure this you cannot control Z this and undo it. I'm going to erase it, and now you'll see I have 11 responses, and it's reformed everything. And if I go back to summary, Colin's response now is out. So you can control the data that way as well. So I'm going to pause for just a second and give everybody a chance. I would encourage you, if you have responses, to look through these 3 different types of data. You may not have responses yet, so but I'll check in with Cam real fast. Cam, is there anything in the chat that I can answer?
So one good question from Linda, it says, I need help with Clipboard. I'm using a Chromebook that is new to me, and I only use to use copy and paste. I could not navigate Clipboard. Any insight into that, Chris?
So if Linda, if you mean actually seeing what's on the clipboard or just copying individual things? I guess I'm looking, okay, Control V, Control X, and that's what you're doing now? Oh, that was Cassie's response, sorry. So is that what, Linda, are you looking for some shortcuts? I'm going to assume that you are. So for Cassie's response, so let me go back to the form itself. So there's a couple of ways, I'm going to go back to questions. There's a couple of ways to utilize your clipboard or copy information. You can highlight it, and then you could, put your right-click mouse on it and do cut or copy. But there are also a number of keyboard shortcuts. So to Cassie's point, if I want to copy something, if I hold down Command and hit V, that's going to paste. Sorry, let me undo that. To Command C is going to copy it. So if I highlight what I want to copy and do Command C, then now that's copied. And if I hit paste, then it's going to paste it in that form. You can also highlight completely like this. And if you do Command X, that's going to cut it completely, but you can still use Command V to paste it back in. There are some advanced things then with Shift Command V about pasting with and without formatting. But I think I'm not going to go too deeply into that right now, just because I don't want to confuse people on forms. And Vanessa, I see you're working with a Mac. Those were the Shift keys or the shortcut keys for a Mac, but they're the same in on a Chromebook as well. All right. Anything else in chat, Cam?
Yeah, Chris. So a good question, final question, I guess, is how do we assign the form? Now we have it all out. How do we give it to people? How do we share it? That type of thing.
Love that question, because I'm just about to go there right now. So I'm gonna take your lead, and I'm going to talk about now, how do we send forms? So let's say my form. So to send my form, first of all, I'm going to go back to the question side. I've proofed my questions and I'm ready to go. To send my form, you have a couple of options. So I'm going to go up here to the top right, and I'll make it bigger. But if I go to the preview form, that's one way that I can see it. Remember, that's how I can proof it. But in this top right corner, here's where I can send the form. So send it means you're going to push it out to somebody for them to be able to complete. So you have a number of options here. First of all, you can send it via email. And if I hit send, you can put the addresses right here into the email, and you can add a little message and it will shoot it out via email. If you would rather compose an email separately, you can click on the link here and you want to just copy the link, and then you can paste that into an email really, really quickly, or you can embed it. You probably won't, I'm not going to go too deeply into embed just because that can be confusing sometimes, but most of the time you're either sending it via email right from here, or you're grabbing a link and you're putting it in a doc and using a hot button or a hot link, or you're composing your own separate email and either pasting that whole link, or you are hot linking certain pieces of text. You can also send it via Facebook or Twitter. This will really depend on how you're signed in and what your district allows. If you look up here in the top right corner, I'm actually signed in under my personal Gmail. So I'm not sure that will be available for all users. So if you don't see these two options, that may be part of the district social media limitation. So you send it just by clicking on, let me make that small again. You just click on the send button right there and you have several options. While we're up in this corner, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Cam.
Hey, I just want to reiterate something there. Over the years using forms and helping others using forms, we've seen this many, many times. And so I want to be really clear. Chris is showing you the right way to do it by clicking on the send button. I know for many other Google Docs, sometimes you go to the URL, you copy the URL and send it. Do not, under any circumstances, do that for Google Forms, because what it does is it gives people access to edit your form. And so I don't know how many times we've seen people send out a form to 100 or 200 people and everyone has back-end access to the analytics instead of the send where it sends them the form. So really, really important differentiation. If you want to add people to help you collaborate and work on the form to design it, then you can share the URL. But if you want to send it for people to take the survey, use the purple send button.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cam, for that clarification. And what Cameron's talking about, clearly, sorry, somebody's at my door. My little yappy dogs are going crazy behind me. So what Cameron's talking about is this address up here. If you copy that address and you share it with somebody, they're going to see what you see. And now I know that, you know, not all of our kids would do this, but we all have those kids, and that picture of that student is in your head right now, who would jump into that form and delete things and make it tough. So yes, make sure you're using the send link over here with the purple button. However, that does bring up a great point. If you want to share this form, so let's say you're on a third grade collaboration team and you guys are working on making surveys or forms into a quiz, which you can do, and I will show that at 1 o'clock at our training, my friends. And you want to add somebody else to be able to adapt the form and change the content. We call that collaborators, or adding collaborators in forms. So 2 ways you can do that. Number one, to Cameron's point, you could copy this address across the top, put it in an email and send it off, and whoever has that then can click on it. The other way is over here in the top right in what I call, again, the skinny snowman. So if I click on the skinny snowman, I have a number of options here. I can undo certain things. I can make a copy of the survey, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. I could throw it away. I could get a pre-filled link, or I could print it, or I could add collaborators. So if I add collaborators here, it's going to bring up this window like we're used to seeing. And if I want to add Cameron to this survey, cagwin@kern.org, and Cameron will get an email message saying, hey, you've been added as a collaborator to this survey. So, and again, that's where you can control your collaborators too. So I'm going to go back to add collaborators again. You'll see here I've added Cameron. If I decide at a certain point I want Cameron not to be a collaborator, right over here on the right side, if I hit that X, he'll come out of it completely. And then I can also change his role. So I can give him ownership of this, or he can just edit. So you can control all of that right under add collaborator. So great question.
All right. Chris, 2 more questions for you really quickly. One from Heather. If I wanted to share it on my class dojo, can you demonstrate how to do that without giving people access to change my form? So will you show them the link to grab, please?
Yep. So absolutely. So I clicked on, let me close this and start over and narrate it. So in the top right corner, I'm going to go to the send button, and that's going to give me those options again. And the default is email, but I'll be honest with you guys, I'm normally typing an email and separately. That's just me. Maybe it works for you, but I'm going to click on the link right here. I'm going to copy that link. So I'm going to click on copy here. And then I can just go, let me open an Outlook. Let me open a new tab here real quick and go to my Outlook account. Give me just a moment as this opens. Then I'm going to open up a new message. As soon as it comes up. So here in my new message, then down here in the bottom, either I can do a Control V and paste that link in like that, or if I want it to be connected to certain text, like I usually type the word here in caps, highlight that text, and I'm going to do Control K to open up insert link, and then I'm going to do Control V to paste that link in and hit OK, and now that's hot linked. So now if somebody wants to take this survey, they'll click right on this text here. You can see it'll take me right to my survey, and it's going to be in this window over here, and I can complete the survey.
And so Heather, that would work the same exact way in Class Dojo. You would be able to copy that link and insert it as text anywhere appropriate.
Yeah.
Chris, one other question. Someone was asking about how to get to the screen where you see the data, the student response data.
Perfect. I'm going to go to that actually right now. So there's two ways you can see the data. First one, I'm going to go to responses. So I create everything on the questions tab. And then to see the responses, I'm going to click on responses. And we talked about these three options here for summary, by question, and then individual. But then also you can see all of the responses in a sheet form right up here if I click on create spreadsheet. So you'll see up here I've got my skinny snowman options. We'll go over that in a minute, but if I hit create spreadsheet, it's going to say, hey, do you want to dump this in something existing or create new? I usually end up creating something new for a new form. I'll hit create, and then you will see all of the responses that we had now drop into a spreadsheet for us as well. So, all right, questions on that? Cam, no questions on that one?
Nope, nothing.
Okay. Somebody asked, I see there's a question from Heather, the shorter URL. Yeah, let me go to that real quick. You can get this link and then ask for a shorter URL. I don't find them to be all that much shorter. If I'm using that, I'm either going to use Control K and make text a hot link, or I'll use tinyURL. I prefer that one personally over Bitly just because it's not case sensitive. But yeah, you can paste that link then anywhere you need to. So, okay, good deal. Sorry. All right, let's see. Let me check my notes here real quick, my friends. I want to show you, I showed you here on responses how to get the Excel spreadsheet. I do want to just point out, I've got a skinny snowman here in responses as well, where you can set some different defaults. I'm going to cover these in the advanced training. I don't want to ignore them right now, but again, I want you up and running on forms before I get into all these custom things. So we'll cover this in the advanced training at 1 o'clock today. The last thing I want to show you is the control that you have over forms in accepting responses. So you'll see right here, and again, I'm on the responses tab. On the accepting responses, right now it's accepting responses. If I click on this tab, it's going to slide it to the left. I'm going to get this big red bar, and it's going to say not accepting responses. So you control when people can complete this form. And I'll show you if I want to go and try to take this exam right now or take this right now, it's going to say, oh, it's not taking forms right now. Now it's asking me if I want to resume collection, but that's because I'm a collaborator. If you were to go to my form right now, you would just see this form is not accepting responses right now. So you control that, and it always gives you this big red bar. You can't miss it. So you'll know right away if it's been seen or not. All right, I'm going to pause there for a minute. Cam, do we have anything in chat or anything we need to address?
No, Chris, I think you got it all covered, man.
Okay. So, my friends, that brings us to the end of our planned coverage here for beginning forms. Again, wanted to be careful with this particular training to be able to really make it point and click, but to get you up and running in Forms. Here's the good part about Forms. You can't, and anything in Google, you can't break it. You absolutely can't break it. So I encourage you to go in there and cut and paste and make a mess of it, and then throw the whole darn thing away and start clean and bring pictures in. And it really, the more you do it, the faster you'll get used to it, and you'll learn things as you go. We do offer the advanced training coming up here at 1 o'clock, so we'd love to see you back if you're ready. If you're not ready for that, we'll be recording that session, and we'll be adding it to the KCSOS teacher onboarding class as well. So with that, I'm going to pause. If there's any more questions, we can absolutely address those. But I kind of want to be cognizant of people's time. We've been in for about an hour, and I know, at least with me when I'm in a training, after about an hour, I'm kind of ready to go. So we'll hang for a minute and answer questions. But if you don't have any questions, I want to wish you all a happy Star Wars Day. It's May the 4th, after all. And thank you for your attention and your time today. Really appreciate the opportunity to learn with you. And I was able to learn stuff today from many of you on the chat. So thank you for that.